Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a huge collection of videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, cosmology, character classes, and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below, or backing me on Patreon where you get access to all of the scripts I write for these vids, if you prefer to read what I'm saying. I also have a Discord server with an active community, and of course, subscribe to me here as I upload at least 2 videos per week and have a live stream every weekend. Every so often, the D&D hobby communities just seem to spit out a creature concept so excellent you wonder why it was not part of the game before. Often these creatures are inspired by a particular type of artwork and image that sparks the imagination, and such a creature is the Skull Snail, known as the Snull. The stat block for these creatures was created by the 1d6 adventurers for the Monster a Day Reddit board, and this video features a variety of artist depictions of the Snull, including that of Nick Maskell, who coined the name for the beastie. I'll be using and building on the ecology and folklore of the Snull presented by them. Sages speculate that these uncommon dungeon and underdark gastropods originated in the shadowfel or perhaps other planes of existence. The obviously supernatural element to their biology is unmistakably tied to some sort of god of death, possibly Myrkul, and probably not a demon lord such as Orcus, as the Snulls are living creatures and there doesn't seem to be the usual mess of mutations and evil proclivities one would normally see in a demon-tainted monster. It could just be some sort of aboleth or mind flayer experiment which escaped whatever perverse laboratory made them, and they are now just become another freaky little horror that adventurers and Underdark residents deal with every day. For that matter, they probably also could be produced by some human wizard somewhere. Who knows what they got up to. Scholars are not sure how long they've been around or how widespread they are just yet, but some observations have been made about their ecology and habits, including the remarkable level of intelligence they display, far beyond your usual slug or snail. From what has been recorded by Sverfneblin scholars, the Snulls breed in much the same way as the large tree snails of the Moonshae Isles do. They're hermaphrodites, having both male and female sex organs. They lay 5 to 10 large bean-sized eggs a year, which have a thick pink calcium carbonate shell, like a tiny bird's egg. Eggs take from 2 to 6 months to hatch, and the juveniles don't grow a shell of their own. They appear like slugs, quite slow moving thanks to having to retract their internal organs into a pouch until they grow large enough to start using a smaller animal skull, such as a fish or a lizard, a bird or rat. Snulls can live for 20 years or more and are slow to mature, reaching sexual maturity at 5 years of age, by which time they will fit snugly inside a humanoid skull and only very rarely grow to true giant size, literally using a giant or dragon skull as their shell. There are some interesting notes about the tree snails of the Moonshae Isles only inhabiting the forests growing on limestone soils, as the tree snails require calcium to build their shells and eggs, while the Snulls seem to have solved this problem quite directly. Snulls are carnivorous. They feed primarily on vertebrate prey. Their mucus is packed with special enzymes that break down flesh, which allows them to easily slurp it up with their small radula, a tongue-like belt of teeth which scrapes chunks of flesh into the esophagus. The Snulls use the skulls of the prey instead of growing a shell of their own, but some do coat the bone with a tough chitinous layer on the inside and the outside. They also are intelligent enough to recognize what a gemstone or a gold coin is, and will deliberately wedge a couple in their skull's eye sockets simply to better attract their prey. Most mages and alchemists who have experimented with the special mucus of the Snull have come to the conclusion that it's got some living property of the substance that contains or generates negative energy. Only a few who have travelled to other realms will know much about microbes and symbiosis, but in any event, the Snull secretes mucus much like an ordinary slug or snail, but in much greater quantities than any type of tree snail. The Snull uses the mucus to move. As for them, it acts as a lubricant. However, for other creatures without the special glands all over their rubbery skin, the mucus behaves like a viscous adhesive that can slow them down and even adhere them in place. Snulls use their trails of extremely sticky mucus to hunt. The Snull's mucus dries after about a minute of exposure to air. The dry mucus is similar to a thin layer of varnish and very swiftly loses its necrotic potency. Experienced Underdark natives and keen dungeon delvers are able to identify and track Snulls thanks to this dried mucus. On uneven surfaces, particularly where there is a lot of pools of stagnant water, the mucus tends to break down quickly and decompose, making them hard to track down. The Snulls hunt by attracting predators and then pretending to flee. As the predators, or greedy adventurers lured by the gem eyes, chase the Snull, they become stuck in its mucus trail and are drained by the sticky slime's necrotic energy. The Snull will then return to completely cover the creature in mucus by smacking their oozing head into the victim over and over. They then start to rasp and slurp up the meal, slowly consuming the nutrients, including most of the bones, but they never eat the skull. Your average Snull is a challenge rating 3 encounter, typically involving a lot of difficult terrain and mucus hazards. They have an armor class of 14, are technically tiny in size, have at least 99 hit points and a speed of 20 feet per round. They're not only immune to their own necrotic damage, but also totally immune to all forms of poison. They have a reasonable dark vision of 60 feet. As an action, they can move around, withdraw into their skull shell, which increases their armor class to 18 and makes them much more difficult to identify, granting them advantage on stealth checks. See, the Snulls often spend a lot of time doing not much other than rasping the fatty sludge of a large meal off of dungeon flagstones and Underdark cave floors, so they tend to collect fungus spores which sprout mushrooms from their skull shell, helping them naturally blend in. Also, while not shown in the stat block, the Snulls don't suffer the effect of necrotic energy, as I mentioned, and I saw a humorous anecdote about an animated undead skeleton being smashed apart by a cleric, only to have a Snull sprout out of the skull on the ground and slither away. The cleric said it's not the weirdest thing that they've ever seen. While withdrawn into its skull shell, the Snull has a speed of 0, unless it's bouncing down a stairwell or something, and disadvantage on all dexterity saving throws. It can't take any actions or reactions other than to emerge again as a bonus action. Its mucus trail is a 5-foot wide line that remains potent for up to 1 minute. During that time, any creature other than the Snull that enters the trail or starts its turn there must make a DC 14 dexterity saving throw. On a failure, a target takes 2d8 necrotic damage and is restrained. The creature can use its action to make a DC 14 strength check and free itself or another restrained creature within reach on a success. If the saving throw is successful, this target still takes half the necrotic damage but isn't restrained. The body of the Snull is coated in the mucus, but not its shell, so as an action they can make a headbutt melee attack, +2 to hit one target within 5 feet, inflicting 1d4 plus 1 bludgeoning damage, and another 2d8 necrotic damage. Despite their high animal intelligence of 7, Snulls can't communicate and operate on instinct, so they are very difficult to train. But when familiar with what motivates their behaviour, they can be fairly easy to control. Like most slugs and snails, they dislike physical contact with pure salt, but it doesn't burn them like acid thanks to the neutralising protection of their necrotic mucus, which is quite different from the normal slug or snail. Tiny creatures such as the mite, snyad and germolane, check out my video on them, which is 2 years ago but still very informative. They are certainly capable of riding a Snull into battle, and these pesky dungeon dwellers can easily breed them in large numbers to form a sort of armoured cavalry to attack in formidable numbers, if not formidable size. And in 5th edition, as I keep telling you all, numerical advantage means everything. They're quite capable of driving the Snulls before them. The alchemical uses for the necrotic mucus are only limited by your imagination and some method of preserving the stuff so it doesn't break down and dry out so quickly on contact with the air. A well-prepared adventurer on the hunt for some Snull slime probably has some liquid or specialty treated container from their patron in order to collect the stuff. Otherwise, when well and truly dead for a few hours, there is a window of edibility for the Snull meat, though it has to be soaked, heated, soaked again and heated again repeatedly before it can be cooked and seasoned and not taste like eating a skunky car tyre. Unless preserved, the Snull meat will erupt in fungus and mould extremely quickly, so it's no good as anything other than a fairly desperate meal during a long rest in the Underdark, or a dwarven and drow delicacy prepared and served in their own ways. The eggs of the Snull and other large gastropods are commonly eaten by many Underdark species. You can forage around for them and come across them like little gems of protein while you're searching through the fungus and getting attacked by large centipedes and things. Please hit the like button if you've made it this far, subscribe, If you have watched more than 4 of my videos, I'm watching you, check out my Patreon for all the full written scripts for these videos, buy some of the finest garments from my Teespring store, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon. And well done to the D&D community for coming up with such a cool creature.